Hello and welcome to 9394, a music podcast. I am your one and only host, Travis Roy. Around here we celebrate arrested musical development, and the album that we're looking back on this week is 1993's Pennywise album, Unknown Road. I have with me a guy I've never met in person. I'm going to call him friend of the show, Joe Lowry. Definitely really appreciate him coming on. He reached out after hearing my regular cajoling, begging, the segment at the end where I beseech people to please come onto my show. He reached out. He had mercy on me. I appreciate it. So here's me and Joe talking about this classic punk rock album from this seminal punk rock band. So here we go.
Hey, listen, people, I'd like to say, a million minds have a choice of ages to walk this way. So when it's time to make your decision true, remember who it is you're fighting for, it's you. No one can tell you how you should feel inside. What's right and wrong is a choice you make up in your own mind. Think you should hurry while you got time. No matter what the case may be, you can demand. You can demand. You can demand what you want and take it. You can command all the rules and break them. You can demand.
Hello?
Hey, Travis.
Hi, Joe. How's it going?
Good, man. How are you?
Good. Nice to sort of formally meet you.
Yeah, exactly.
Right on, man. Well, should we hop right into it?
If you want to go right into it, I'm ready to go right into it.
Let's do it. Cool.
Awesome.
Between the lines and you'll be just fine. Think you should hurry while you got time. No matter what the case may be, you can be mad. You can be mad. You can demand what you want and take it. You can command all the rules and break them. You can be mad.
All right. Well, thank you for doing this. I appreciate you doing it. I feel kind of like I know you a little bit already because, well, actually, I always start the show with the guest telling people how we know one another. So
Yeah.
tell the listeners how you and I know one another, Joe.
Yeah, so I kind of came to know Travis through a circuitous route of the Michael Govier experience, which is quite an experience. If any of you know Mr. Govier. So, I played fantasy baseball. I produce content in the kind of the baseball world, mostly focused around baseball cards, but, prospects and scouting and that type of stuff. And so just kind of by force of nature, the Palazzo podcast kind of entered into the sphere of knowledge here. And, so I enjoy it. I started listening to the Palazzo podcast quite a bit. And eventually, at some point in the Palazzo Discord, Govier posted a link to other podcasts. I'm like, dude, you do other podcasts? You don't let us know enough on the Palazzo side that you do that. He does tend to do a cross-pollination kind of in his other podcast saying, check this out, check that out, but not so much in the Palazzo side. So you got to work on him there, Travis. So
he's a work in progress, just like all of us, I guess.
Exactly. So he posted a link to Is It Safe, actually. So I started listening to Is It Safe? And so this was probably in the spring, April, May-ish, some point. And you had actually guest hosted on one of those.
Okay.
So that was actually the first time I heard you was you guest hosting on Is It Safe and giving, Luca a really hard time, which was awesome.
Which he appreciated.
Yeah, and Luke's awesome.
Yeah, he's the best.
I loved your Lagwagon episode with him.
Thank you.
That was great. I love that album. I know you guys were kind of talking about Haas as kind of one of their big albums, but man, I listened to that album so much, just around that time, the mid 90s Lagwagon stuff was, just part of my punk experience.
Yeah.
Just learning all about it and hearing all that stuff. Then he, like I said, he started cross-pollinating the information in the Is It Safe podcast and you being there saying, check out Cinema 9. So I checked out Cinema 9 and I really like what you guys do over there.
Thank you.
So yeah, I started going through the backlog there and then you started mentioning your music podcast and it took me a while to figure out how to find it because should I put in the apostrophe before the 93 or not to search it out? So it was 15 minutes of Googling.
I've always been really good at hamstringing my efforts at self-promotion. Uh, how awkward can I make this podcast title difficult to find?
Yeah.
I'm glad you found it. And yeah, I feel a little bit like I know you because you're a prolific letter writer into these
Yeah.
podcasts. You've written into Mike's show, Is It Safe, quite a bit. I actually don't listen to his Palazzo podcast because I don't really follow baseball. So it's like a mystery to me. But yeah, you write into that show and you've written into Cinema 9 a few times. So it's nice to actually like put name to face and get to meet you in person. Do you have a podcast of your own as well?
I do a podcast. It's called the Local Card Pod. In the baseball card world, your shops that you go to typically are called local card shops. So we kind of made a play off that. It's in the Prospects Live podcast feed. Search out Prospects Live. You can search out my name, Joe Lowry, or at JHook on Twitter. You'll come across it, but it's heavily, baseball card focused. So you got to be into it for it to be of any interest to you.
Sure. It also sounds easy to find. So that's good.
Yeah.
So punk rock and baseball, you would have fit right into our friends group here in Michigan, but you're on the West Coast. Are you in LA proper, or are you like just kind of in Southern LA? Where are you at?
I'm in the northwest suburbs. It's a suburb called Simi Valley, which
I've heard of it.
Yeah, most people have heard of it because of the Rodney King stuff.
Yep.
This is where the trial was moved to, was Simi Valley.
Oh.
And if you remember the outcome, there's a reason why. Because Simi Valley tends to be heavily conservative, right-wing leaning. We have a lot of flags flying on trucks as you drive around town. It's not necessarily my way of thinking, but that's where my wife was born and raised before all that kind of stuff really came to fruition. And, the other thing it's known for is Reagan, and the Reagan Library is out here too. So you can see kind of how those dots connect, right?
Yes, there's a strong conservative side to California. A lot of people don't seem to know that necessarily, but there's enclaves, and it sounds like you're rooted into one of them. And it's funny you mentioned Rodney King already, because we'll certainly have to get into that again in talking about this album. Which album are you here to talk about today with us?
I'm here to talk about Unknown Road by Pennywise. It's, a classic punk rock album.
Oh, yeah.
And, Pennywise is one of the core punk rock bands of the 90s for sure.
Yep, they're very much, they're South Bay legends. They're from that special kind of like punk rock royalty area. They felt like one of the first steps forward in like the new wave, or like I guess third or fourth wave of punk, whatever it was, the Lagwagon era, the Bad Religion era. So yeah, they were definitely someone I got into because of my older brother. He was a skater, so he got the first album right away and was all about that and that kind of stuff. So he was my plug-in to this band, as well as some of my friends got really into him too. Do you remember how you got into this album?
I do. So I actually grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, suburbs of San Jose. And so I was inundated and so I'm a couple years older than you, Travis, but not by much. I was born in 78. So I was in high school from 92 to 96. And it was, originally I'm the older brother. So I didn't have somebody to kind of show me the way. So it was my friends group, and my parents just listened to pop and whatever. Right. Classic rock, but I didn't even really get exposed to that because my dad was mostly listening to Motown by the time he had me.
That's not bad.
Because, he'd given up smoking the weed, so he was no longer listening to Zeppelin and Cream and all that stuff. So just my friends group was pop, and then eventually the wave of gangster rap kind of took us over. And so I was just listening to that when all of this came out. And eventually in 96, I went down to UC San Diego for college and ended up in a situation where my freshman roommate had a good friend who was just super into punk music. We spent a ton of time with him, and he just, taught me the ropes and showed me everything. And so that was my education, was essentially September of 1996, my freshman year. Just what is this music? I had known grunge at the end of my high school kind of life. I started hanging out with people that knew grunge, but punk rock was just completely off the radar, except for what got played on the radio, right? Which for me was Green Day and Offspring, right? Yeah. And that was about it. And that wasn't kind of this true skate punk, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah, that was, especially because it was on the radio, it just kind of automatically did whatever to it. Like, everyone else likes it, so it must be less pure punk, which isn't really true. But at the same time, I think I'm really lucky to have had my older brother get into this stuff so young. And then it was like a force of nature in my life because my brother was really into it. And then my friends group, including Mike Govier and Luke Horlbeck and some other people, they really got into it too. And I was in a band at the time, and like the people I was in a band with were like, okay, we're becoming a punk band now. And I was like, oh, okay, we're a punk band now. I could roll with this. Because I was already into like Face to Face and some other bands that kind of on my own. This is one of those albums that to me, Unknown Road, God, I had not listened to it in so long. It feels really imprinted on me though, because it felt like a punk rock fever dream to like dig into it. Because I've done this thing, I don't know if you've done this, maybe you're more of a punk rocker than me. As I've gotten older, you know, certain genres that I've waded through, especially in my earlier years where I spent a bunch of time in that genre and then moved on to something else. There's like 3 or 4 albums that I'll pluck whenever I'm in the mood for that. So I'll put on Punk and Drublick or Against the Grain or Hoss or something like that, maybe Generator. And that's pretty much what I've been doing for the past 15, 20 years if I feel like listening to punk. So I've not listened to this since the fucking 90s. And I was surprised at how much I still remembered all of it, how much I was able to sing along with it. It's like, oh yeah, this is like a ghost from punk rock past.
Yeah, no, totally. I've also kind of had the same experience. I don't listen to punk rock very often anymore. And when I do, it's going back to primarily the core Pennywise albums for me.
Okay.
Unknown Road, About Time, Full Circle, and then I love Live at the Key Club because that kind of touches on a lot of those albums and I get to hear them live. It's interesting with the Live at the Key Club. They sent out an email to their mailing list we're going to put together a greatest hits album. What do you want to be on the album? And pretty much everyone said, no, we want a live album.
That's what they did instead.
That's how that album got made or why it was put out. And yeah, it's one of my favorites. And, you know, look, there's a book that Jim, the lead singer of Pennywise, wrote called Punk Rock Dad.
Yeah.
And then that transitioned into a movie called The Other F Word, which, you know, is standing for fatherhood.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm sure it doesn't have the exact same impact on you because, you know, you're a single guy without kids. But for me, it really, really captures my journey, too, where it's just like you're in your teens and your 20s. You're just like, you know, I'm not going to listen to anyone else. I'm going to do the things I want. I'm not going to do what society's telling me. Time is fleeting and I'm not thinking about the future. Right. And then you suddenly go, well, now I've got a wife and a kid. I need to pay my mortgage or my rent. I need health insurance. I need all that stuff. And it's really like you're integrating into society, all the things that punk rock rebels against. And suddenly you're like, I enjoy the songs and the themes and everything, but it doesn't hold the immediacy that it did when I was enjoying that music. So for me now, it's, you know, I throw that stuff on for nostalgia and I throw that stuff on, you know, honestly, when I'm like, need that artificial adrenaline shot when I'm working out. That's about it, right?
Yeah, it's good workout music for sure. It does kind of give you that rush of energy that it did like in our childhood or like younger, you know, not childhood, but like teen years and early 20s and that kind of stuff for sure. How about, can you pick a favorite song from this album that you love so much?
It's tough. You know, I love so many of them, but
yeah.
I think I have to go with the title track, you know, song number 1, Unknown Road.
So you're currently content with your surroundings because it makes sense of accomplishment. But when you have to give, did you get conservative? Think about the years that pass you by. We're all well spent. Pictures of the real life fun memories. Extra things put triggers in your mind. What would be different now if you were there than here? What passes, what fantasies are just beyond the unknown road? Do you know the miracles that could be found the way down the unknown road? So it goes, a few more concerns that could be yours.
You know, it's funny. There's about half these songs have alternative names because just back then the printing of the CDs and the vinyl and the tapes were kind of a mess as they were trying to figure it all out. So on vinyl, you'll also see it referred to as The Unknown Road.
Okay.
One of the first poems I ever remember learning about in school was literally The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. And in the liner notes, they actually quote that right before they put the lyrics, right?
Oh.
The quote is, you know, 2 roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. You know, my dad's a chemist, and I ended up getting a degree in Spanish language. And everyone was like, you're going to be a mathematician or a scientist coming out of high school. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. I want to have fun.
Yeah.
And that's part of that punk rock ethos. I got into college. I'm just like, I'm not here to work hard. I'm here to have fun, for better or worse. It does touch on some of the standard themes, right, in this album. There's a few songs that diverge from that, but again, it's the not listening to what society tells you, kind of taking the path less traveled, you know. And honestly, in a lot of music that's got whatever it is, rock or punk or rap even, that's got like strings or a piano in it, I'm a sucker for it. You got me. You pulled me in.
Yeah.
Darn it. I wasn't prepared for that, and it pulls me in, and I love that little piano intro to the song.
It's such a great intro to the album, too.
Yeah.
It does just set you up and pull you in. This is a serious punk rock album. This isn't like a goofy, like, hey, let's sing about beer kind of album. This is like, we've got some serious issues to discuss here. Society, adulthood, politics, urban issues, all this stuff's going to come up. So it does kind of make sense for it to come so hard, so fast at you, but also with this melodic thing going on to it. In revisiting the album for me, I had to pick for my favorite song on this album. I thought I was going to say Homesick, but I ended up going with Time to Burn. I think it's really indicative of what really works about this band and this album for me is I'm a sucker for simplicity, but when it comes to punk rock in particular, I'm usually not that, because it can be so simple. I was never really into like the Lookout Records kind of like, or Screech and Weasel kind of punk where it's just like super simple. But this has a real simplicity to it, but you have all of these intricacies going on with the stops and time signature well, not time, but like the breaks and like the breakdowns and that kind of stuff, and with the solo work of the guitarist, and then of course Jim's vocals, and this in particular, he really just soars. They always get these comparisons to Bad Religion, and in some cases rightly so, but there's no punk band that does vocally quite what he does on this. I mean, generally, but especially with this song, it's like, it's almost Smoking Popes, which I was never a fan, but it's like, it stops short of being like hokey, and it's just instead like really melodic and really, I don't know, it's unique. I love it.
Yeah, it's a great song, and it's funny. Pennywise, another reason why they're kind of, for me personally, the primary punk band that I love, and I love a lot of punk bands, but it's the bond that it built with my brother and I. In 98 or so, I transferred up to San Francisco State to kind of go back, for many reasons, to the Bay Area. And my brother, who was 12 at the time, maybe 13, he hit me up and he's like, dude, I just played this game Top Skater, and it's got all these, it's just all Pennywise songs. Who are these guys? And so I gave him my Unknown Road and my About Time albums. Awesome. And said, start your education. Here you go. Yeah. And so he's even more of a Pennywise fan than I am, but we love talking Pennywise. He's got literally on his back in Old English, Unknown Road tattooed from one shoulder to the next on his back.
Oh, wow.
And he's been to a ton more Pennywise shows than I have. And so when we were talking about this, I said, dude, who is doing that kind of spoken word on Time to Burn? It kind of sounds like Jim, but I'm not really sure. He asked Jim on his Instagram, and Jim responded, and he's just basically like, yeah, I was just kind of channeling my inner Southern Baptist or something like that.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought it was him.
Yeah.
Because there's other songs, especially the last song, what's it called? Clear Your Mind, where there's radio and like TV kind of coming in. I did kind of suspect that was like his own little tirade.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, Jim wasn't even here for the kind of conception of this album, right? He had kind of left the band.
Right. For the first time.
Yeah, for the first time.
Of twice, right?
Yeah. And so Jason, the bass player, Jason Thirsk, he had written, I think, the majority of this. Pennywise doesn't really credit who writes stuff, at least in their earlier days. And if you watch concerts, right, they'll often say, Unknown Road, written by Jason Thirsk, right?
No.
And so that's why I wasn't sure about Time to Burn. I'm like, that kind of, spoken word thing sounds like Jim, but maybe it's Jason, I don't know what. So, hey, do you know? I asked my brother Sean, do you know? And he's like, I don't know. He's like, I don't know a bigger Pennywise fan. If you don't know, then why not? Why not ask him on Instagram? And he responded. So that's cool.
Went to the source.
Yeah.
That's cool. So I am kind of curious about the lyric writing on this album, because there is all right. So getting into the whole post LA riots thing that's going on in this album, particularly the songs of Homesick and or is it homesickness? What's it called? The homesickness.
So it's both. That's what I'm talking about.
No wonder I got confused.
So generally it's referred to as homesick. My brother has a vinyl where it's called Homesickness.
Okay.
On the CD I have of Unknown Road, it does not have Clear Your Mind listed.
Oh,
but it's on the CD.
What a clusterfuck. I mean, and on their Spotify, the song Try to Conform is listed as Try to Confirm.
Exactly. On Epitaph's website, it's the same. They listed as Try to Confirm. So they're all pulling from that same site for their remaster. And Spotify doesn't have the bonus song on it either, which is called Slow Down, which is kind of a secret song. And then there's another song, I think it's Dying to Know is actually called Savior on other pressings. I mean, it's just, like I said, it's all over the place.
It is all over the place. The other post-LA Riot song is City to Burn.
Yep.
Which, I like that song, but there's this lyric. Like, what do you make of this? A mass of shadows, darkness usually hides, animals out of their cage who will burn their environment without any shame. Like, that's a little, I don't know how I feel about that. It's like, what exactly are you getting at here? Now, I understand I did not experience riots, and they're clearly grappling with that in this album. But also there's like a couple elements where it's like that's a little, I don't know how I feel about that one.
Yeah, it's definitely left open to interpretation. I think it's saying to me that while we're all human, that we're all animals at our most basic level, and that when it comes to pure emotion, our baser instincts can come out, and the riots kind of showed that happening.
Yeah.
And they were attacking, anything. It was not focused on the true, as Luke would say, the class warfare, that type of thing, right?
Yeah, because you think punk band, you kind of expect to be like, yeah, burn it down, fuck it up, who gives a shit? But there's this kind of urgency to the album about like, hey, we got to keep it together. We got to hold things together in a way. And there are things I agree with very much in some of the lyrical content, and some things where I'm like, you sound like a scared white man. But it's easy for me to say because I didn't experience those riots.
Yeah.
Do you have a song on this album that you think is like underrated, or at least for you was underrated?
Yeah, so it's tough. I set kind of like an artificial, it's really hard to know with albums that didn't get a ton of radio play what is underrated, what's popular and whatnot. And so I set myself kind of like an artificial bar of anything under 1 million plays on Spotify for that would be my bar. So because I asked my brother what his would be, and he said it's up to me. And I'm like, yeah, that's on my list. And then I look at it, and it's, the 4th most played song on the album. Yeah. So for me, that's kind of not fitting the qualifications. So the place I went was Vices.
You never listen, you never know, never the leader, you always follow. Isn't you doing it? She said that it's alright. To yourself you're lying, I don't want to see you dying. Before you know it, you're all alone. Your can is empty. Feels of sorrow. You think that using all your best friends is alright. To yourself you're lying. Can't you see it? Can't you feel that vices are ruining your life? And on your vices are ruining your life. Your mind, your vices are ruining your life. Why can't you stop that vice from ending your life?
I just like the change up in lyrical content, and it's still got that kind of, it can be played at a Pennywise concert and you can rock out to it. I don't know if Jason wrote this or not, but it's almost prescient with his challenges with alcoholism and eventually taking his own life.
Yeah.
I just feel like it's got a strong message, right? Of, your vices are ruining your life. You're not thinking about the future. Why can't you see it? Acting like you want help, but you're still living high. You're not answering the door when we come by to help you. Why won't you answer that door, right? That all really speaks strongly to me throughout the generations, throughout my life. It's something I can look back on and look at those lyrics and say, yeah, that still holds value today as somebody in their mid-40s that doesn't, feel like it's disconnected from me like some of the other lyrics in these songs.
And they're not a straight edge band. They never were that I know of.
Nope.
But there is, again, like a certain conservatism, and not like right wing or like Republican conservatism, just kind of like let's not burn it all down. Let's conserve ourselves and let's save ourselves from ourselves. For me, I think if I had to pick a song from this album that reverberated the most, over the years that I didn't forget about was actually Vices, because it would be like the kind of song, like if I was getting like too fucked up on a Friday night, I might be like, the Vices are ruining my life. It'd be like the kind of thing I would sing to myself.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But a song that, listening to this album, that I had almost no recollection of, let alone its lyrical content, that I was like, this is for me the underrated song. And one of the things I like about this category is it can mean something different to every guest. And so like for you had like this very specific criteria. And for me, it's always just like, what have I been underrating personally? And I went with Nothing.
Life, I was a lonely man, with my leg boots near to the floor, dancing the best that I can. Sweets took the pain away. I saw cold at the end of the line, and so I started to pray. I tried to describe, I knew no one would answer me. I asked the trees why they grew towards the sun. I asked the clouds and they rained down bad luck on me. Oh my God, oh why has that forsaken me?
Because I love the messaging in that song. Not every single thing about it do I agree with. Like, I don't think that there's nothing, but I do really like the unflinching kind of, no one knows. Don't fucking say you know. Nobody knows. You're full of shit. It definitely reminded me of why my brother probably loved this album, because he was like a raging atheist from like, I don't know, the womb. So I really dig the lyrical content, and I like the way it's framed, and it's just really just a solid jam. It's just a cool song.
I love the kind of like the existential examination of why.
Yeah.
Why? I love it. And Jim, I believe, does still hold some kind of Christian type of beliefs, and you can tell in his lyrics he's definitely exposed to it, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's even so much that he still is questioning it, right? I love that song, definitely was on my list.
And I really like that Jim, and again, whoever wrote these lyrics, I'm not really sure, but as a band, to compare them to Bad Religion again, because Mr. Brett and Greg Graffin write all the lyrics there, but so as a band, both of these bands deal with major issues, but Pennywise is not so hung up on being polysyllabic and like having like these, these $10 words. It's a lot more straightforward, and I find it in some ways more relatable, because you're not like getting caught up on the verbiage.
Now, got some explaining to do. I've got to come up with solutions in time before my future is due.
Yeah, definitely easily digestible, no matter your education level, which is important, right?
Yeah. I mean, not everybody's a PhD.
Yeah, ain't that the truth?
Ain't that the truth?
Slipping away.
Now, I don't know about you. I had a really hard time picking a least good song on this album. Were you able to come up with one?
Yeah, so from a lyrical perspective, it was the bonus song, Slow Down.
Oh, okay, which I didn't even hear.
Yeah, no, so that was just basically like kind of the same old thing about not conforming to society, but it was a much more about, screw everything, screw responsibility. I'm going to live in the now, and, screw reality. And it just kind of struck me wrong now that it didn't. But for one that you have heard, for me, I love the lyrical content, but the song doesn't really stand up for me in the overall scheme of the album. And just being somebody that enjoys Pennywise live and being at their concerts and listening to them is Tester.
I see your problems are all inside, but you don't even know. If you start trying to open your mind, then you could just let them go. The more that you know, the less that you know. You'll see those problems are all inside of your mind, and soon you'll find your light is going down, you reach the ground, got to run.
Again, the lyrics are actually relatively strong, even though it's not true, but I like the idea that all your problems are inside your head.
Yeah.
But there's no part where it's just like a punch up where I can just like sing that chorus, right? And it's not recognizable to me. Honestly, when it was playing, I'm like, I barely remember this song. So to me, it was kind of the weaker ones.
Yeah, we picked the same song because my general feeling was on this album, there's like, what, 12 songs in this album? Maybe more? How many songs?
13 plus the bonus, yeah.
Yeah, so, and there's like 4 or 5 that are just immediately stand out. They're just like really good standout songs. And I felt like the rest were pretty much on the same level, except for Tester, which just doesn't have that same punch. It doesn't, like you say, just doesn't have that same hook to it to pull you in the way that pretty much every other song in this album does. So I'm gonna have to agree on that one.
For sure.
What song do you want to use to end this episode with?
To me, it's got to be Homesick.
Nice.
Unknown Road and Homesick were the 2 songs off the top, and they both nailed it for me and just sucked me into this album so hard.
Yeah.
And then again, the theme was more not the standard one, not what 8 of the 12, 13 songs was about, right? It's more about urban decay and why is our city like this, and go capitalism. Shout out to Luke. And love for how our city used to be. There's a bit of a nostalgia thing there, right? I haven't been back to San Francisco since 2007, and everything I hear about it, some of it's, I'm sure, sensationalized.
Yeah.
But I have no desire to go back right now. And it was a city that I loved. And I know these guys were more talking about, LA, but to me, again, that still holds, that lyrical content still connects with me.
Yeah.
And so that was important. And the other piece, like I mentioned earlier, was Top Skater. That arcade game was just amazing. I played it so much. My brother played it so much, and it's all Pennywise songs, but it's spread across various albums. And if you had asked me, what song from the Unknown Road album is played on Top Skater, it would be Homesick. That would be the one that I've been like, yeah, it's Homesick that's played on that album. There's also Dying to Know and Try to Conform on it, but I couldn't have told you that. And so just all of those pieces of the puzzle for me make me say, that was my second choice for my favorite song.
It was mine too.
So for sure, that's the song I'd want to go out on.
I think that's a great choice. Yeah, it's a great song. And another one that really just stands out. It's a funny thing about punk albums, especially from this era, like there weren't really singles, they're just ones that like the fans love the most. And I feel like Homesick and Dying to Know are like the big hits, if you will. You've seen them live?
Yes.
Yeah, I've seen them, I think, only once, and it was way back in the day. Do you have any stories, any war stories about seeing Pennywise?
Oh, yeah. So that was really the first concert that I truly went to kind of on my own, like as an adult. I'm sure I saw random things growing up with the family, going to the fair or something like that. But going back to my college days, my buddy's like, the Pennywise is playing, we're going. It's a little club in San Diego called Soma. So it was the first time we'd gone, and it was maybe 1,000 square feet or something. I mean, you get packed in there. The band that actually opened for them was H2O.
Oh, they're so good live.
And I'd never heard them. I didn't know what was coming.
A big circle pit, that's what came, right?
we were standing next to the stage. I wasn't prepared, and suddenly, they hit that first chord, and I'm just smashed in my back going, I had no idea. I was like, what is going on? And from then on, we were just standing up front, in front of the pit, in the pit.
Yeah.
Listening to Pennywise there. It was an unreal experience. And then I told my brother, look, many years later, if they're ever playing Soma again, we're going. I'll buy us tickets. Just tell me when. Yeah. And then it happened sometime in the mid-2000s. So I bought tickets. We went, and apparently Soma moved. And it was like this giant venue. I'm like, oh man, this is not the Soma. So I couldn't enjoy the show as much as I wanted because I was so let down by the venue. And the other times I saw him 97 Warped Tour. Okay. And that was amazing.
I saw him at the same stint.
Yeah, it was absolutely amazing. They played a Sublime song because Bradley had passed away and recently at that point, which was awesome. They did Stand By Me, that they kind of did at various shows, and they brought up people to sing it. And some shows I hear it was terrible, and this show they brought up like a 10-year-old, 11-year-old kid, and he absolutely nailed it. Jim was just like stunned.
Wow.
And then after the kid was done singing, he's like, I'll give you a choice. You want to jump back? You can just jump into the pit right now, or you can come back and hang out with Pennywise after the show. And the crowd just like, jump, jump, jump. And the kid didn't know what to do because he was just so young. And so he eventually was coerced into jumping into the crowd. But then Jim's like, of course you can come back. Come back around. Come on, come hang out with us after the show.
Wow.
And my last one is funny. As I was doing like a little bit of research, I had forgotten I went to the show until I saw somebody talking kind of about the downfall of skate punk or board sports punk, right?
Yeah.
And he said one of the reasons for that was the rise of pop punk with Blink 182, and Good Charlotte and Newfound Glory, right? I'm like, oh my gosh, I haven't thought about Newfound Glory in forever.
Yeah.
And I went to a Pennywise show in the mid 2000s at House of Blues, which is no longer there, on Sunset in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
It was a great venue. I actually saw Bad Religion play there too, and Strung Out and a few other bands. And Newfound Glory was the opener for Pennywise, which was a terrible choice, especially in kind of the LA area, where you're still getting a lot of the guys from Hermosa coming up, and they just wanted nothing to do with, and it was just the whole set. They were just yelling at Newfound Glory. They were chanting Pennywise, Pennywise. And at one point the singer just lost it. It's just like, you know what? Pennywise invited us. They wanted us here. So you guys are going to just have to deal with it, So kind of an ugly scene, but
that's too bad.
Yeah. This is the way to experience Pennywise, in my opinion. Now, they're still playing. They're a working punk band, that's for sure. They tour a ton. The experience is never going to be like it was back then when they were playing in the 90s, but still, listening to them live, being in that experience is just amazing. I love it.
Reflects tonight an ugliness showing an animal instinct, a twisted way to wrong or right.
And they've really just kept on cranking out albums too. Like while I was off doing other things, they were just like every couple of years or so just pumping out a new album all the way up until 2018 at this point.
Yep.
Have you listened to any of that stuff? You still keep up?
I don't. Just like we were talking about earlier, we've kind of moved on from the genre at large, and we just kind of go back to those touchstones. So
it's foundational, and that's important.
Yeah, and even, as they kind of went through the 2000s, they had their hits on, Land of the Free, and, they had that Alien song, and whatever it was, F Authority, right? Mm-hmm. Those albums, I listened to the hits, the big songs, and the rest of it just didn't stick with me.
Gotcha.
And so as time went on, I'm like, it's just going to be worse and worse. So I just didn't really keep up with it.
No, yeah, I feel you. There's not a lot of bands you can stick with their entire career. There's some special ones out there, but not a lot.
So if you look at this album specifically, you see that Randy played the bass on all but 2 of the songs.
What was Thirst playing?
So this is when Jim originally left. Right? So Jason was going to be the singer.
Oh.
Unconfirmed, but they say that Randy was Jason's bass teacher. And so that's how he got brought in. There's actually a show out there where they're playing in Hollywood and Jason's singing. And he's singing the Pennywise songs from the Pennywise album and from, the EPs. He does a commendable job, but he's no Jim. Mm-hmm. I think they would have faded away if Jim, because that tone, that timbre, you kind of hit on it earlier from Jim, is just, one of the hallmarks of Pennywise.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting thing that I honestly had no idea about back in the day, just because the internet was what it was, right? You just don't know those things. And looking back over this, I'm like, holy moly. And so that's why I think a lot of, I'm assuming a lot of these lyrics are written by Jason because of that.
Yeah.
One other thing about the piano in Unknown Road, let me go back to that. The Wikipedia says it's from the movie Poison Ivy or something like that.
Oh.
And it's unconfirmed. And my brother said he watched all of Poison Ivy looking for that piano and he couldn't find it. So I doubt it's there. But in full circle, their album in 97, after Jason took his life, at the very end, they have like an almost 14-minute version of that piano.
Yeah.
And it's played by a guy named Ronnie King. Do you know who that is?
No.
He's worth a look up on, because I didn't know it either. He's worth a look on Wikipedia, because his credits are wild. And it's mostly like studio work, playing keyboards. He's played keyboards for Tupac, Snoop Dogg, Slim Thug, UGK, Mariah Carey. He was playing keyboards on an Offspring tour, No Effects. He was an additional guitar player on one of the songs on The War on Errorism for No Effects. Keyboards for Rancid live on their tour, you know, the Pennywise Unknown Road on Full Circle, TSOL, Busy Bone, Casey and JoJo, Warren G, Coolio. I mean, it's insane.
He's got to be like an LA session player that just like knows everybody.
Yeah, it was insane. I was just, because I was like, I love this piano and I know there's a track on Full Circle. So I went and listened to that full track and I loved it. And it's actually funny. They credit it on Wikipedia as freestyle piano. He just took that little bit and he jammed on it, which is really cool. So yeah, there's a lot of fun things, you know, like your brother mentioned on the Bad Religion episode. Epitaph figured out that putting all of their music on, giving it to all these board sports videos would, you know, raise the profile of all of their artists. And, you know, they had already made a bunch of money off of Offspring's Smash album, right? More than they probably ever thought they were going to get. So they're just like, you know, it's publicity. We're looking for publicity rather than pure money and money grubbing right now. And that was a huge deal for Pennywise. I mean, they truly became the band that was best known, you know, in all those board sports videos. And I was a snowboarder. So for me, I saw a ton of that. And I watched a ton of skate videos with my buddies because those were super popular too.
At the time,
Yeah, it was awesome. And that's why Pennywise has, you look at their tours, they're always going to Australia. Why? Because of all those surf videos. They're super popular in Australia.
Yeah. I saw that on Wikipedia that they're really big in Australia. That does explain it, all the surfing. And one last thing I wanted to mention about Jim's voice, because I don't like my comparison to Smoking Popes. Maybe a better comparison would be like the Misfits or the Cult, where it's like this kind of like operatic punk almost thing that he's doing there. Yeah,
I love it. I was mentioning to another buddy that I was diving into Pennywise, and he's just like, that tone, that timbre that Jim has is just uniquely identifiable. You hear that and you know, right? It's
awesome.
Great.
Yeah. All right. Well, so you have checked out my other podcast, Cinema 9. So you know I like to talk about movies.
Oh, yeah.
Let's go back to the movies. This came out on August 17th of 1993. So I've got 9 movies here, like Cinema 9, that were in theaters that weekend that you or I could have seen if we wanted to.
Okay.
Off the top of your head, do you have any guesses of what may have been out at that time?
No clue.
Okay. Well, Jurassic Park, of course, was like in every theater.
That was the one that came to my mind.
Clever girl.
that's what I thought you were going to say.
I was going to say it, but I'm like, I'm so bad with time. I don't know if I saw that. I know I saw it in the theaters, but I couldn't tell you if I was in junior high or high school when I saw that.
That was one of those that came out in June of 93, but it just never left theaters. Right. So we probably could have seen that.
Yep.
The Fugitive, remember that movie?
For sure.
That's a huge hit.
I love it.
That was out the weekend of August 17th of 93. Jason Goes to Hell, Friday the 13th, 9 was in theaters. Yep. Classic. He's not in space yet, but still fun. Rising Sun, speaking of Michael Crichton books adapted into film. I never
Wesley
saw that
Snipes
one.
and Sean Connery?
Sean Connery. I want to say Sigourney Weaver. I don't know why. I got those names mixed up in my head. Searching for Bobby Fischer, which I vaguely remember.
Oh, yeah.
Heart and Souls with Robert Downey Jr., where he had like 4 Guardian Angels. Tom Sizemore was one of them, and Charles Grodin. And I don't know. It was. I remember it. It was, but that's kind of a deep cut.
Yeah.
Robin Hood Men in Tights, the Mel Brooks film, right? Secret Garden, which that was not something that men of our age would have been very interested in.
No.
And lastly, Free Willy.
Oh man.
Yeah. So which one, if you got a time machine, you can go back and see one of these movies in theaters. Which one's it going to be? Only don't say Jurassic Park because that's an obvious option.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the movie to see in theaters of this group because of just the impact doesn't hold up as much when you're watching on your little 13-inch at home.
Yeah.
But for me, it's easily The Fugitive. You know, it's just such a classic, so good. It's still rewatchable. If it's showing up on the TV guide as I'm scrolling through stuff and there's nothing else to watch, I'll throw it on. You know, Richard Kimball, I will watch it.
It's funny to me that movie is not better remembered, because when that came out, like, it seemed like it was a fucking juggernaut. It had a sequel, had a spin-off with U.S. Marshals, right? It was like such a widely celebrated movie, and then now I never ever hear anyone talk about it.
It's true. I mean, Tommy Lee Jones was, really kind of making his mark then too, and
I didn't kill my wife.
I don't care. I always love that.
I know, right? Right?
Just like the frank reality.
I didn't kill my wife.
Like, I don't care. I'm just doing my job. Get off this fucking thing and come here.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so funny. All right, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on board and talking Pennywise with me. It's nice to formally meet you.
Yeah.
And you're definitely welcome to come back on 93, 94 if you got other stuff from the era that you want to talk about.
Yeah. And hopefully I didn't ruin it for anybody else that takes Travis up on his offer of, hey, if you're, friends or whatever, let me know. But even if you're not, hit me up on my email and, 9394pod@gmail.com, and we can talk about albums that you like from that era. As far as I know, I'm the first person that Travis didn't truly know that said, let's do this.
This is true. I had one other person, I had another podcaster who I didn't know come on, and we talked Front 242. But you're the first person to actually answer the call of hey, every episode, hey strangers, please come aboard my sinking ship that will not float if I don't have guests. So I do appreciate you coming on for sure.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Love being here. Thanks for having me.
Homesickness is the flu that surrounds me. A virus spreading through the street, it astounds me. Homesickness! The city used to be such a beautiful place, but now you can't walk down the street and things don't seem the same. Hands are in the air, it makes no sense to me, and I cannot explain this tragedy.
A big thank you to Joe Lowry for coming on to the show. He clearly had a lot to say about Pennywise, or definitely a big deal in his life. So it means a lot to me that he would come on here and share that with us. If you want to hear more from Joe, check out his podcast, The Local Card Pod, if you're into baseball cards, or if you're into Joe. If you want to come on the show like he did, reach out to me at 9394podcast@gmail.com. If you're a Pennywise fan, I'd wager money that you like Strung Out. Strung Out released their album Another Day in Paradise in 1994. Maybe you want to come on and talk about that album. Or maybe you want to come on and talk about some other album from 93, 94. I don't really care. I just need guests, and if you don't want to come on the show yourself, maybe you know somebody in your life that would be a good fit for the show. Maybe you got a friend or a family member, somebody you know that loves music from this era and won't shut the fuck up about it like me. And they could use, a platform to blather safely on about some album they love. Send them my way. And if you want to help the show, one thing you can definitely do is share it with friends, rank, review, rate, do all that stuff on whatever app you're using to listen to the podcast on. And that's it. So thank you for listening. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. '93, '94, a music podcast with Travis Roy, is a labor of love. It is not and never will be monetized. Please don't sue.